We begin with breaking news coming in from Paris. A terror attack in one of the most famous tourist spots in the world. Gunshots ringing out on the Champs-Élysées, usually packed with people. Of course, many of them tourists from all over the world and the United States. It is now a crime scene tonight.
One of the most beautiful streets in all the world, the iconic Champs-Élysées on lockdown tonight, the latest target of terror. Just after 9 p.m., a car pulls up next to a police vehicle. A gunman armed with a military-style weapon gets out, opens fire. This video, shot from across the street, appears to show the chaos at the time of the shooting. One police officer killed, 2 others wounded, and a bystander hit. This man says he saw it all. He came out and started shooting, he says, but he could have shot us on the pavement and killed more people with the spray of shots. But he targeted the policeman. I heard 6 gunshots. Sirens blaring, police and emergency vehicles swarm the wide avenue, usually packed with tourists. Now a scene of panic.
Mesdames et messieurs, you have to stay back, please.
As the area is secured, Parisians, many now accustomed to these emergencies, ordered to keep their hands up because no one was sure at this moment if another attacker was on the loose. Within 2 hours came that claim, that boast of responsibility by ISIS. This attack coming just 3 days before the first round of presidential elections in France, bitterly contested, and one of the leading candidates, Emmanuel Macron, in a TV interview when news came of the attack on the Champs-Élysées. President François Hollande, somber, emotional, who's seen so many of these attacks during his tenure, speaking to the nation tonight. We shall be of the utmost vigilance, especially in relation to the election, he said. And President Trump in Washington weighing in shortly after the shootings.
Our condolences from our country to the people of France. Again, it's happening, it seems.
So let's get to our chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran, tonight. And Terry, what more do we know about these claims from ISIS?
Well, David, that claim of responsibility, if true, coming so quickly, suggests perhaps that this was an attack planned and directed by ISIS, not just inspired. This may not just be another wannabe. We've seen that before in France, and it could well be an attempt to shape that presidential election.
Right-wing presidential candidate Marine Le Pen held her final rally in France on Wednesday before the election. At the rally, held in the port city of Marseille, Le Pen vowed to rid France of the poison of Islamic radicals. Just 1 day before her rally, police arrested 2 men in Marseille on the suspicion of a terror plot scheduled for the election weekend. Meanwhile, independent centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron, who is leading in the polls, reached out to the Muslim communities to discuss solutions.
At least 24 Iraqi forces and several of their coalition advisors, including American and Australian special forces, were hit by a mustard gas attack. ISIS is, of course, to blame as they're being pushed out of Mosul. This attack was relatively ineffective, though, and considered low grade by the officials. Reports show that only about 6 Iraqis were treated for breathing issues at a field clinic, while none of the advisors were harmed. The Pentagon has released this statement saying that the ineffective attack shows the desperation of ISIS as they seek to hold an untenable position in Mosul. This was apparently the second chemical attack in just the last few days. An Iraqi army military officer has claimed that ISIS launched a rocket loaded with chlorine gas in the Al-Abar district of western Mosul.
The Israeli military has just announced that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad still possesses tons of chemical weapons and that there's no doubt his regime was behind the April 4th gas attack against his own people.
Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman says he's 100% certain it was directly ordered and planned by Assad. France agrees and announced it will provide proof of these allegations in a few days. Israel closely monitors the Syrian civil war but has largely stayed on the sidelines. The Jewish state carries out occasional airstrikes against the movement of weapons to Iranian-backed Lebanese Hezbollah terrorists just across the northern border. Israel's now working with the United Nations to return more peacekeepers to the frontier. The force abandoned its bases after being attacked in 2013 and 2014, and the vacuum was filled by Syrian rebels, including an affiliate of the radical Islamic State terror organization. About 120 UN soldiers returned to their posts last year, but Israel would like to see more stationed to uphold the 1974 ceasefire with Syria after the Yom Kippur War.
President Trump's ambassador to the United Nations is trying to shake things up there. Senior correspondent Rick Leventhal tells us Nikki Haley has come to the world body with a unique agenda.
The 7,929th meeting of the Security Council is called to order.
Every 3 months for the past 17 years, the United Nations Security Council has met for what's called an open debate on the Middle East, focusing on the Palestinian question and its goal for an independent state alongside Israel. Critics say the meetings have traditionally been Israeli bashing sessions and accomplished little. The new U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, isn't satisfied with the status quo.
If we are speaking honestly about conflict in the Middle East, we need to start with the chief culprit, Iran and its partner militia, Hezbollah.
Ambassador Haley asked the members of the Security Council to refocus on state-sponsored terrorism, singling out Iran's support of Hezbollah, which she says is the far greater threat to stability. Israel and the UK were in obvious agreement.
Where there is terror, where there is death, where there is complete disregard for human life, there is Iran.
Iran continues to play a destabilizing role in the region. This is most clearly seen in Syria.
Russia, a key Iranian ally, was quick to change the subject.
We would like to express our categorical disagreement with the attempt to tailor this meeting to the domestic context and exclusively to American foreign policy focus.
And the Iranian ambassador was defiant.
By blaming all others but the occupier, the U.S. seeks to raise the question rather than addressing it.
Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is slated to travel to Russia next week to attend the Conference on International Security, which will focus on critical problems of global and regional security. During the trip, Lieberman is expected to meet with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to discuss ongoing efforts to end the war in Syria. Last February, Lieberman spoke to the Russian Foreign Ministry over the phone to discuss the possibilities of restarting peace talks with the Palestinians and the ongoing efforts to end the Syrian civil war. Last month, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Russia to discuss Russia's involvement in the Syrian war and urged the Kremlin to stop Syria's ally, Iran, from gaining a permanent foothold in the country. Talks between Lieberman and senior Kremlin officials may get a little awkward, though, as Lieberman was one of the first Israeli leaders to unequivocally blame Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad for the chemical attack in Khan Sheikhoun, killing 86, including at least 30 children. Both Syria and Moscow strongly deny the allegation, with Assad going so far as to say that the attack was completely fabricated.
A special-purpose U.S. military hardware was hovering above Korea's EC on Thursday. According to Seoul's military officials, the aircraft nicknamed Nuke Sniffer was deployed to verify rumors of an imminent nuclear test by North Korea.
Tensions have been running particularly high on the Korean peninsula, which means the related parties are taking extra steps to ensure they're ready to react based on information that is both timely and accurate. The U.S. Air Force's WC-135 Constant Phoenix aircraft, also known as the Nuke Sniffer, was spotted in South Korean airspace above the EC on Thursday afternoon. According to South Korean Defense Ministry officials, the plane was deployed from a U.S. base in Okinawa to verify rumors that North Korea was going to conduct its sixth nuclear test the same day.
North Korea is issuing a new warning to the United States after a week of pretty tough talk coming from the Trump administration. On Thursday, Pyongyang, that's the seat of government in North Korea, warned of a super mighty preemptive strike. At a news conference with Italy's Prime Minister, President Trump would not respond to questions about the mental health or mental state of Pyongyang's young leader, Kim Jong-un. But the president did comment on supposed progress the U.S. has been making in the region.
As far as North Korea is concerned, we are in very good shape. We're building our military rapidly. A lot of things have happened over the last short period of time. I've been here for approximately 91 days. We're doing a lot of work. We're in very good position. I have great respect for the president of China. As you know, we had a great summit in Florida and Palm Beach and got to know each other and I think like each other. I can say from my standpoint, I liked him very much. I respect him very much. And I think he's working very hard. I can say that all of the pundits out there are saying they never have seen China work like they're working right now.
The US is seeking evidence that the Chinese military is preparing for a potential North Korea contingency, a US defense official told CNN Thursday. Chinese Air Force land attack cruise missile-capable bombers were put on high alert on Wednesday, the official said, adding that the US has also seen an extraordinary number of Chinese military aircraft being brought up to full readiness through intensified maintenance. There has also been rhetoric from the US and Pyongyang, with the latter state media warning Thursday that a preemptive strike by North Korea would result in the US and South Korea being completely destroyed in an instant.
Despite China's support of the measure, CBS News reports Russia objected to a Security Council statement proposed by the U.S. on Wednesday that would have condemned North Korea's missile tests. A Security Council diplomat familiar with the negotiations confirmed that the draft press statement was approved by China. The country is the North's closest ally. In addition, the other permanent members of the Security Council approved the statement. Russia was the lone dissenter. The statement includes a Security Council demand that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea conduct no further tests. It states that North Korea's illegal ballistic missile activities are contributing to its development of nuclear weapons.
Russia says its military holds the most powerful thermobaric bomb of its kind, dubbed the father of all bombs. With a blasting power 4 times more powerful than the American mother of all bombs, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the U.S. arsenal, and the largest non-nuclear bomb the United States has ever used in combat, the FOAB would live up to Russia's claims, according to analysts. It would have destructive capabilities comparable to a nuclear bomb without having the same threat to the environment. Living things within the blast radius would be vaporized.
Russia will hold a presidential election in March of next year. The sitting president, Vladimir Putin, has not yet announced whether he will run, but he did say on Thursday that, quote, the successor to the president is determined only by the Russian people in the course of democratic elections and no one else.
On Thursday, the Russian Supreme Court decided the country's branch of Jehovah's Witnesses is extremist, likening it to the Islamic State. The group is to be disbanded and its assets seized by the government. Jehovah's Witnesses have about 170,000 followers in Russia. The group will appeal the decision. They have a month to do so. Under Russian law, the ban would not prohibit individual believers from following their faith. However, congregating and preaching would become offenses punishable with upwards of 5 years in prison.
For years, it was almost unheard of to be gay and right-wing. Well, how times change. Anti-establishment parties like France's National Front appear to be wooing the gay vote. Despite being against same-sex marriage and adoption,
I think the adoption for homosexual couples, which is the direct consequence of homosexual marriage, is deeply regrettable for the simple reason that there are such things as biological realities.
Figures show the party's approval rating has risen significantly among people who identify as LGB. Every vote counts. Apparently triggering the switch was the 2016 gay nightclub massacre in Orlando, an attack which left 49 dead in what was considered a homophobic attack. The American-born killer had pledged allegiance to Islamic State. While across the Atlantic, the French National Front leader spoke out.
Homosexuality has been attacked in the countries that live under the Islamist jackboot.
Shockwaves resonated across gay communities, while in Europe a spate of sickening homophobic assaults were also making headlines. In the wake of attacks like these, usual voter concerns like the economy and health are waning against the perceived threats posed by an influx of refugees. As well as in France, anti-establishment parties like Alternative for Germany and the UK Independence Party say they're growing their LGB following.
We have fought very hard for homosexual rights, and I don't see why that should be taken away. And that's why a lot of young people, a lot of homosexuals, a lot of people with alternative lifestyles are now supporting parties which, quite frankly, want to see limitation or cessation of immigration. So therefore, there is a great attraction to the Front National or to groups that are previously or people described as right-wing.
U.S. and Vatican officials said President Donald Trump will meet with Pope Francis when he travels to Italy next month for meetings with the G7 leaders.
I just want to make sure I know that we will be reaching out to the Vatican to see if a meeting, an audience with the Pope can be accommodated. We'll have further details on that. Obviously, we'd be honored to have an audience with His Holiness.
For his part, Archbishop Angelo Beccio, the Vatican equivalent of a deputy prime minister, confirmed to the Italian news agency ANSA that Pope Francis is always ready to receive heads of state who request an audience. In last November's election, according to Pew Research, Catholics voted for Donald Trump by a substantial margin over Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, with 52% voting for Mr. Trump and only 45% voting for Mrs. Clinton.
In Venezuela, anti-government protesters are flooding the capital city of Caracas, rallying against the government of President Nicolas Maduro. Demonstrators have clashed with riot police. At least 3 people have been killed. Adding to the chaos, General Motors said Thursday it was forced to shut down operations after Venezuelan authorities unexpectedly seized the company's plant and stole its cars. Venezuela is currently experiencing its worst recession in decades. The auto industry has collapsed, oil revenue has tumbled, and the country is short on cash for imports. GM is the latest in a string of corporations that have been taken over by the Venezuelan government as part of the so-called 21st century socialist revolution, which actually started 2 decades ago under the late Hugo Chavez.
We want to share what's an ominous story from Venezuela tonight. Like every other country that has adopted socialism, Venezuela has collapsed inevitably into dire poverty and chaos. Shortages there are universal. Inflation is now in the triple digits, and despite the world's largest oil reserves, that country can't even keep its lights on. Things are so bad that at this very moment the country is plunging into civil disorder as thousands of demonstrators clash with security forces of the president there, Nicolas Maduro. But there's another lesson in Venezuela besides the failure of socialism. In 2012, that country banned the private purchase of firearms and ammunition and launched a massive campaign to disarm the civilian population. That wasn't accidental. You can see where this is going. Faced with the demands that he relinquish power and hold free elections there, President Maduro has decided to unleash armed supporters, their guns weren't taken away, on his disarmed populace. On Monday, Maduro announced his plans to expand the country's civil militia from 100,000 to 500,000. Every member gets a gun. The intent is clear. If he and his cronies can't stay in power forever, they will do so with the force of arms, and the masses who have no guns don't stand a chance.
US prosecutors are preparing to charge WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. That's according to reports in US media. The US has been after Assange since 2010, when the site published thousands of classified documents leaked by former US Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning. Assange has been staying at the Ecuadorian embassy in London since 2012 in an attempt to dodge prosecution. Will Dennislow picks up the story from New York.
I think a major thing is that under the Obama administration, lawmakers and then Attorney General Eric Holder really believed that it would be very difficult to press these charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. They felt that he'd be protected potentially under the First Amendment, this freedom of speech in the United States. And of course, Julian Assange believes and describes himself as a journalist. But according to the Trump administration, now these are officials speaking to US media, they believe that they could pursue other means of pressing charges, could even possibly go as far as to charge him for espionage. That would be an incredibly different kettle of fish altogether. Of course, this all comes just recently. Earlier this year, WikiLeaks also released a trove of CIA documents that really gave information on how to break into software and devices. That's reported to have incredibly irritated the CIA. So that's certainly a significant development in recent months.
From Capitol Hill to Hippie Hill, marijuana enthusiasts observed their 420 holiday with public smokeouts, parties, and yes, great deals on weed. Before the clock even hit 4:20 p.m., there were arrests in the nation's capital as police took 7 people into custody at a demonstration that involved handing out joints to congressional staff. Pot fans in Los Angeles went for a cannabis-fueled hike, and in Portland, Maine, a local author spent the afternoon giving away more than 200 grams of marijuana to a long line of fans. The annual celebration of cannabis culture gave activists an opportunity to reflect on how far they've come. Recreational use of marijuana is now legal in 8 states and the nation's capital. But on the national political tone, Trump administration officials are reprising talking points from the heyday of the war on drugs, saying they want to bring America back into the 80s in terms of drug policy.
Meet the Sisters of the Valley. They are California's self-ordained weed nuns, and they have responded to a higher calling, though they are not part of any religious order.
We're against religions, so we're not a religion. We consider ourselves Beguine revivalists, and we reach back to pre-Christian practices. And our clothes are not so much that of a nun, and that's not what we're trying to be. Our clothes, through our clothes, we are showing respect to a plant that has been lied about and disrespected for 100 years.
The women grow and harvest their own cannabis plants according to the moon cycles. And sitting around a kitchen table, the women trim the plants, then cook the cannabis to make balms and ointments, which they say have the power to heal and to improve one's well-being.
So we grow it, we dry it, and then in these pots, we cook it in coconut oil at 130 degrees. Then we strain the plant out, and what you see the women doing here is the final stage where they are adding essential oils and beeswax and jarring it for shipping to the customers.
Sister Kate said she adopted her nun persona after dressing as a nun during an Occupy Wall Street protest. But this operation is not an act of civil disobedience. California is one of more than 24 U.S. states that have legalized some form of marijuana for medical or recreational use, but the drug is still illegal at the federal level.
Watch this special moment between a baby and her grandmother. The two have a lot to tell each other. Baby Aria is 8 weeks old and deaf. Her mom is deaf too. Aria can't hear anything but looks on intently at every word Grandma signs to her. She's trying to get her granddaughter to say Grandma in sign language, but Aria hasn't signed back just yet. Since this video was recorded, the two haven't seen each other, but will hopefully reunite soon, so they can continue their heart-to-heart talk using words this little one is learning to communicate.